daily coverage of an individual news event or issue. Digital only.
Yeah, excuse me.
So that can be, bless you. That can be in the form of galleries, slideshows, scrolling pages, video, and any audio that are part of an entry may be considered, but the still photography and its presentation carry the primary weight.
And
Any questions?
Just to clarify, it's single stories, right? These are all single stories.
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so.
Yeah, I think so. I actually did look at this briefly last night.
Yeah, each of these only has one image.
Could we get the description?
Can you click? They should each have a URL where you can scroll through.
Yeah, that's.
And I can go ahead. Why don't I'm going to share all of these URLs collated in one place on Slack too, if anyone wants to scroll through on their own time as we talk through these.
That's great.
Sorry, before we start looking at them, can we just get the descriptions of each
Yeah, I
story?
was just about to ask if you still wanted that description. Okay.
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay. Project description for this is how Liberty University discourages and dismisses students' reports of sexual assault. The school, founded by evangelist Jerry Falwell, ignored reports of rape and threatened to punish accusers for breaking its moral code, say former students. An official who says he was fired for raising concerns calls it a conspiracy of silence.
Just say, if it's okay, did you want us to talk, Emily, while we were looking at these?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, because I did get a chance to look very quickly at some of these last night. I have to say I was very impressed by this one, just not only by the kind of mission of, really trying to do some good in the world, but also I just thought the visual approach was really strong too, that, the series of portraits that the photographer did were all very kind of unified in the use of light. They had that very, I don't know the right term for it, but, using that light in a way that really enhanced, it sort of gave it a slightly more, I don't know if it's otherworldly, but, a dimensional feel that was sort of beyond the literal that I really appreciated. And
it kind of reminds me of like, and I hope I'm not putting too much of myself in this, but like as a survivor, I feel like that use of light kind of speaks to the disassociation that you tend to feel.
That's a great way to think of it. Yeah.
And I think that's what really struck me about these portraits too, was just kind of that sort of fracturing that's occurring.
Right. That's a great way to articulate it. Yeah, I totally agree. Just taking you out of the literal, but also out of the body almost a little bit. But
exactly.
So I was really impressed by that. And just kind of the amount of evidence almost that was in here. But it just gave it a cohesive look, to the whole series too.
Yeah, it's almost like that fracturing and that use of a light shows you how all of these women are tied together through the same experience.
Right.
I just shared each of the links and some login information for all 9 of these.
Thank you.
Anyone wants to open them up and also go through them on their own time.
We should be looking these on a desktop, right?
It's a great question.
I think that's a great question. How do you all consume digital news?
On a desktop.
I mean, that's how I was looking at them last night, but
I personally am more on my phone, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm just
yeah.
conscious of how different that layout is on a phone.
Mhm.
mhm.
I think that's up to you all to weigh.
Well, I think desktop makes sense then. We started with it, we should continue.
Yeah. Also, specifically for this, I'm scrolling through it now on my own desktop. These images are really massive, and you kind of lose that if you look at it on your phone.
Mhm.
You guys want a description for this?
Yes, please.
Sure.
All right. In The Ghost Light, photographer and theater director blank examine and reflect on the theater spaces that were closed during the COVID lockdown in New York City.
I thought this was a cool idea, and I thought it was cool that they used, I think, what's essentially a poem as the running text. But I know that doesn't speak to the picture editing side.
Well, no, it does though, because if you're on digital, you have control over where pictures show up.
Right. I just meant in terms of the use of a poetry as text. But
Mm.
the one question I had about this is look at the last 3 images after this one, or the last, I forget if it's 2 or 3 after this. Oh, those are great. Those quotes from the characters.
Yeah.
But the last couple of images are all pictures of sets. And I am assuming that was a conscious decision to group them, all at the end. So rather than using them to break up the, so.
So good.
Yeah, so those 3 are all. Anyway.
Project description. Wait, sorry. Oh.
Is it judges maybe? I'm not sure. Oh, no.
Not sure, but I think we
Oh,
actually,
it's
It's
judge
judge
at
at
wash
wash.
post. Yeah,
yeah,
wash post. So I forgot they do that instead of Washington Post.
This is just wash post.
Yeah.
All right. Grief, anger, and fear envelop Atlanta's Asian American community after a mass shooting.
So this one, I gotta say, I thought was great in the physical form. And then online, it was really disorganized.
I really liked how tight it was in print also, but
Yeah.
I still like it here, but I agree that it was just more elegant kind of on the,
Just kind of thinking the same thing. It's funny how that worked in both mediums, but
Mhm.
I do like it here still.
I like it here still too. It just feels very different though, but
Yeah,
Actually
And I
prefer it
sh-
digitally.
I think the
I-
print version was just like that wow of like, oh wow.
yeah, and they
that's a
just
layer
really
you
got
don't
it
see.
down to like the core kind of, but I felt the opposite for the other, for the New York Times one about Asian American love. I
Mm.
felt like the digital was so much better than the
I would
print.
agree with that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Project description. After the deadly collapse of Champlain Tower South, local residents and volunteers mobilized to ensure that Jewish burial customs were maintained for all who wanted them.
It's like a tight edit
Hmm.
for a seemingly simple story, but
Mhm.
I don't think there's any fat on that one for me.
Project description. In fear, hope, or desperation, these women left home seeking new lives. Some found opportunity, others found more uncertainty or worse.
I thought adding a few more images in the digital version really helped this. I still think there's repetition, but I just felt it had a little bit more breathing room, I thought, in the digital version.
I think I agree with you. There's a different pace to it.
Yeah, I think so. I'm still not sure it's in the top, selections, but it just felt better to me.
What's also in the print version, it felt a little like sporadic and cluttered, and here it just feels more organized and
Mm-hmm. I think it's
digestible.
well, it's more clearly divided into chapters, I think. Right?
Mhm.
It's much better, but it's also much longer.
It is long.
But I almost prefer it this way.
Mhm.
The
It takes
chapters
the
make way
weight
more
off.
sense.
Mhm. Mhm.
Sorry?
It takes the weight off of
Hmm.
each.
Mhm.
There's some of my least favorite images are still here, but they're
But I feel like now they have a
I can ignore
purpose.
them. Mm.
Yeah, I prefer the digital edit over the print edit by far.
Yeah, I agree. You can always include more.
I would have actually preferred to have seen some of the images that were omitted in the print change,
Yeah.
because it just would have given it more variety. And I think
Yeah,
it felt kind of one note.
it's interesting.
Yeah, there's some weird.
Uh-huh.
I thought it was. I agree. I thought there were some
Hmm.
obvious bangers here that didn't make it
Yeah.
to the print. It's not short.
No.
No. Yeah, man, the addition of these extra chapters and extra images really,
Like I love that.
I love this.
Yeah.
I think
I
that
know.
I
Oh,
could
that's
be
great.
misremembering, but I think the entire last chapter with the photographer doing her own story, I think that's all added. I don't think that was in the print version, if I'm
No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
right.
That's
So,
so good.
and I've heard of that photographer too, Tana Farok, but anyway,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm kind of. I mean. Mhm, 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 mhm.
Yeah.
I wish there was a different lead photo.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
felt the same way. I really felt the same, both in print and digitally.
Yeah. It's funny, in the print version, it was a story that I really wanted to like. And I saw it like on the cusp of being something that I was trying to be.
Hmm.
And in digital, it's like, oh, well, this is how it's meant to be seen.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Project description: in a nation with a history of racist housing policies, this community became an enduring exception and a point of pride.
I think the difference here was they just added maybe one image to like each situation, like the extra still life here. Not in exactly in every case, but I think that's kind of what they did.
I mean, it drives me crazy that they're not allowing. This is a design issue, but they're not allowing me to see the full photograph here. That's just like a crime.
Oh,
It
that's
is an
really
absolute
a
crime.
great point. That is a great point.
My guess is that you see it on the mobile,
Wow.
but I don't know
Oh,
for
you
sure.
probably do it because it probably shrinks down.
God, you would
Yeah.
have to. Yeah. That's
But-
actually really interesting.
That's just like, why even, how am I supposed to take that in?
No, it's the exact opposite of the last story we just talked about, where I prefer the print version.
Hmm.
I was gonna say the
Okay.
same thing.
Huh,
100%.
I do like seeing the addition of some of these other images, but
Mhm.
seeing the print edit, like the right decisions were made in terms of what to keep and what to print and what to leave for digital.
Mhm.
Mhm, mhm.
It's kind of like when I was saying earlier, limitations forced you to get creative,
Yeah.
and in
Right,
print,
right.
like you made the right choices.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Where here it's kind of like you have the freedom, but
But
Don't
what
know
do you
if you
do with
needed
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great point about the portraits not fitting, so you can't see them all at once.
All right, project description. After the pandemic, we probably will have lost a generation.
Was that the full description, or did we lose you, Lizzie?
Oh no, that was the full description.
Okay.
I mean, I have the same problem with this inability to see a whole image at a single time. It's just criminal.
yeah.
Are you looking at this on mobile?
I don't have my phone on me, so I can't.
Well, you can shrink the window to see what the mobile looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that first photo, not this one, but the next one. Well, I'll point it out in a second.
Oh,
That one.
So this
Better on
photo right
mobile.
here, it's like when we were scrolling, right? It's like one of the few photos that a scroll actually works
mhm,
when you
totally.
don't see the entire
Interesting.
image.
It reminds me of that one in India with the burning the corpses.
Mm.
Yeah, you can see the images when you're on mobile, which is
Oh,
positive.
interesting. Yeah.
But they're also cropped. They're square crops when you look on mobile.
Oh, huh.
Oh, really?
I mean, I think
they're
so.
not-
Wow.
If
they're
you go
not
back
when I
up
shrink-
to that
When I
last
shrink down, I
photo,
don't see a square.
is that square in the desktop version too?
I don't think so.
It's not square on my computer.
Yeah, I thought it was a horizontal, but
It is. So the crop also changes depending on what you're looking at.
right.
Yeah.
Huh.
Photo editing, first place. UX design, last place.
Oh, it's great.
I know, I love that picture.
I really love these pictures. I gotta
Good.
say.
I like a lot of
Really
them
good.
too. I did question the placement at the beginning of, that, I think this is the last picture, which I like a lot too. But I think what you had said, Shamindra, in that one, the second photo, going then from which I thought was, made sense. But then when you go to the third picture, I thought, was it maybe the best choice to go to yet another that was really
Right.
pulled back with a lot of little tiny ant people?
Mm,
So,
Yeah.
mhm.
but
I would say no. It
Yeah.
actually dilutes the impact of the last one. you just
that's
saw.
what I
Agreed.
thought. It dilutes the impact of both in a way for me. But
Mhm.
Oh, I thought that they communicate with each other because the one before is the burial ground
right.
and the next one is the line for vaccination.
And it could
So
be
it's
that that's
like-
what they had in mind, but
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
visually,
Yeah.
I
don't
would
know.
have wanted
the
to see
living-
the sequence later,
Mhm,
just so
right.
the other one could breathe more. But I do see your point, Emily, in that they are in conversation with each other.
Yeah, I read it like these are those who died in this line, and these are still the living in a similar line,
Right.
waiting to be vaccinated. Then we go into the vaccination room, and there's the person getting vaccinated. To me, that seems like
Mhm.
a
I
fine.
think for me, though, part of that is if you do want these two to have a dialogue with each other, then thinking about not just the order that they're seen in, but how they're presented on screen. When you know that people are going to be scrolling through it all.
Uh-huh.
Also, if you start with the first image, so it's like close up on a grave,
Right.
and you pull out and you're
Uh-huh.
seeing the whole graveyard, then you're
Right.
out with the living, and then you come back in. It's like a,
Like a
you know,
palindrome.
yeah, it's a palindrome, right? Right, exactly. With vaccination. Anyway, we should keep going, but
Yeah, we should go to the next story, huh?
I find it so much easier to look at this when they're not massive.
When they're not what, sorry?
When
Massive.
when I'm looking at them as well on a, individually, and it's just way easier for me to see them when
Oh,
they're in a smaller screen, so
huh.
I can take in the image.
You can
If
If
also
you
set
want,
your,
I can minimize the window size.
I like seeing it at this size. to be
Yeah, that's
honest.
fine. I'm just
Okay.
speaking for
if
myself.
you
No,
set your view
Uh-huh.
option to fit to window, it's a nicer way of viewing it.
Mhm. I would keep our window size the same for all these entries, just to be out of fairness.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I think mine is already set to fit to window.
Project description for this: millions have been displaced, thousands killed, and reports of human rights violations are rampant as a civil war escalates in Ethiopia's Tigray region.
You know what I didn't know about this one, and I have a lot of respect for the photographer, is, when women are portrayed who've been raped and violated, I mean, I don't know if they said anything like in the text or made any attempt to like conceal their identity, or, that was one thing that kind of crossed my mind. Oh, and then showing these burn victims, they didn't have any kind of, I think it's the next one. No, not this one. There's this one that is just so hard to look at and really just so painful. And they didn't have any kind of like warning or caution. Anyway.
I struggled with this one.
Hmm.
I mean, like you, I know who took these photos, and I deeply respect them. But this kind of presentation it didn't sit quite right with me. It kind of harkened back to a time in Nat Geo that the magazine itself has said, we need to not present the world for a certain audience by a certain audience
Yep.
in a certain way. And that's kind of what the struck me as.
But I have to admit, though, that I often am sort of like hibernating and not looking at the news, but I had no idea that this kind of horror was going on in Tigray. I just heard vague headlines and hadn't really been focusing on it. So I felt like I was really educated and sort of brought to feel the horror of it.
Ethiopia has been, unfortunately, an epicenter for rape and sexual coercion as a tool of violence during war. And I too struggle with this. I do like the presentation, but to Shaminder's point, I think my struggle is that I feel like this photographer in particular kind of works within that old school Nat Geo framing of conflict and violence against women in a way that often rubs me the wrong way. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like there was some nuance missing in this.
It's a tough one though. Like you can argue it, like that burn photo. You can argue it both ways. Is it not important to see this? It's happening.
Oh,
Just
I
because we don't
agree.
show it to you.
No, I
But,
agree it's
yeah.
important. I was just
Yeah.
surprised that they didn't have, they're worried about not showing the F word and then they show that, I just
Right,
thought there
right.
would be
There we go.
some kind of warning
Yeah.
or,
That's kind of what I'm saying. Like you can argue it both ways. Like
right.
yes, it's important, but then another side of it, you can also say, was that necessary? Was that the best way? Should
Yeah.
people have had a heads up that it's coming?
Yep.
Is
I
this
mean,
poverty porn or is this actually needed?
there was a
Right.
heads up in the ProPublica piece about the
Right.
bruising,
The
right?
bruises. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. And I feel like that's the respectful way to empower your reader to make a choice.
Mhm.
Project description. The fires have released roughly as much carbon as Germany does in a year and sent plumes of smoke spilling over the North Pole.
So that was the last one.
I wish there were more. For this.
Yeah.
It's really good
Could
work.
we
There were, but the first round judges culled it down to these few.
Oh no, I meant specifically for this piece. Like I wish there were more images. And
Oh,
the edit felt just a little bit too tight almost.
Yeah.
a
Well,
lot
I
of good
have to
work?
Yeah, I love this one, the ProPublica piece. That was the one that really stood out for me. But
Same.
I mean, maybe I'm just too used to looking at National Geographic pieces, but I thought there were so many things to be said in its favor, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably the thing that I love the most about the ProPublica piece is not only is the photography really good and the edit's really strong. I feel like when I look at digital presentations of images, I kind of want to see people push in terms of UX experience, in terms of how they're showing me the images. And I do love that Nat Geo and the New York Times have like a sort of standard that they've set in terms of their digital presentation. But in looking at all of their pieces for Nat Geo and for the New York Times, I was kind of wishing that they kind of pushed it just a little bit more in terms of presentation of the images digitally. I think this just does it so well.
But to play a little devil advocate with that, the photo editor themselves might not have any control over the UX. Like they might have one or two templates to choose from.
That's true.
You know, so I don't know if we can. It's important to think about. It's a good discussion to have about how we interact with images digitally, but I don't want to ding a photo editor for something they had little control over.
Yeah, I've never had control over the design of a web piece. But
Yeah.
just,
Well, I think this photo editor made good use of whatever template they were handed, but
I also think, I mean, like you guys are talking about the presentation of the image. There's a cohesive feeling to the set of images. you know,
Yes.
and
right.
that doesn't have. Maybe the
Yeah.
photographer had an idea, they bounced it around with the editor, or the editor came up with it with the photographer. However,
Right.
it happened, right? There is some
Mhm.
intention and some thinking happening.
That was exactly the first thing that I thought when I saw these, and the first thing that I said, today. It just, they feel so cohesive, like they're deliberately part of a series, and that there was some intention in terms of the effect that they're using, that it makes sense and has meaning within the context of who they're portraying too.
This
Yeah.
this is one of those pieces that makes me think like there is really good collaboration between the photo editor and the
It feels
photographer.
like it.
Mhm.
It feels
They were deep in conversation with one another, and it
Mhm.
shows in the final product.
And not only that, but to go back to the that one with the warning, and you had the pictures from one of the victims that provided, for a photo editor to think about how are people going to interact with these photos.
Yes.
That's a part of it. At first I would have said, I wonder if this was a COVID thing where you have to take pictures through glass, but the beach photo is like, no, it's all intentional.
Mhm.
Huh.
Just for process purposes, do we want to do a round of ins and outs, or do we want to jump right into ranking?
I would prefer to do ins and outs, so we could just kind of see
I
what
think
we're
that's a
working
good
with.
idea. Yeah, it's a good idea.
So I think we may already have them all pulled up here. It sounds like this one's an in for everyone.
For sure.
Yes.
Okay.
For me, yeah.
The next one was the COVID theaters closed one from the Times.
This is an in for me.
That's
I
in.
would vote this in also. So,
One is the Post Atlanta.
It's in for me.
in for
In
me. Yeah.
Champlain Towers.
I'm gonna say in.
Say in, but I'm, for now, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. I'm sorry, is Emily here or?
I'm here. I'm
Okay, sorry.
I'm
thank you.
listening.
Okay, great. I'll vote this in, actually. I wouldn't have initially, but you guys kind of persuaded me, I think.
I'd say in for now.
I'll say
Uh-huh.
in for
It's
now.
on the
also.
cusp.
Okay.
I'd say
I'll
out for
say
this.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've already awarded it.
I really love the story though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree that it was stronger.
I'm
I'd
gonna
say
in.
in for this.
Same.
I'll say in for now, but
I'm gonna say out.
Out.
I actually vote in, but
Emily, want to be the
Yeah,
Okay.
sure, we can keep it in.
in? Okay,
I don't know. I would say out for this one.
out.
yeah, I'll say out also on this one.
Oh, I like this one.
So we're down to 7.
All right.
That's still so many.
Mhm.
Remember, four placements.
Right. I mean,
Are there
this to me
any-
is the one, but
I think this is my first.
it's my first.
Mine as well.
Okay. So we have 3 votes for this for one. Was there a second that really rose to the top for any of you?
The Asian American one from WAPO might be my number 2.
Yeah, same for me.
Oh, I have such problems with this one.
Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's
Yes.
talk about it.
Well,
All right.
I have a hard time with the visual storyline
Can we
or
scroll through?
arc. I'm going to pull it up on my screen too. Hold on. Is this Washington Post? It is, right?
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Like we don't get a place setting until, first of all, I feel like there's some amount of repetition. And then I don't get a place setting to know where I'm even supposed to be landing until close to the end, where I see where is it?
I
The
guess
strip mall.
well, to me, this
think
is
that-
all so interior kind of and about
Mhm,
emotion
mhm.
that
Yeah.
I didn't think that it had an, I know it's based in Atlanta and that's where the shooting happened. So I totally get your point, but I wasn't thinking of it as that. It just seems so impressionistic to me.
The
Totally.
idea that I was getting was that
Mhm.
how is this particular community, the Asian American community at
Mhm.
large, feeling about the grief and the sorrow that everyone is sharing in because of this
Mhm.
event that happened in Atlanta? So it was like, on the one hand, it was specific to the spa. And then on the other hand, it was also just specific to this collective feeling of grief and pain and rage. And I thought it was really beautifully illustrated in this.
This is like one of those, and Waypo's pretty deft at doing this. It's like the day 3 story. It's like something has happened in the world. Help us understand and make sense of it.
I'm sorry, the what story, Shaminder?
Like a day 3 story, right? It's not the day 1
Oh.
story that says something has happened, news hasn't broke.
Right,
It's like the
right.
day 3 story that says, help me have context and help me have understanding. What
Uh-huh.
does this mean? Right. And so that's
Right.
what this story does. It tells me, what does this mean for this community? And it's in the
Mhm.
perspective section. It's kind of
Yeah.
like that internal dialogue that's happening. And the edit for me is it's kind of like this really ethereal kind of edit where you get a feeling in a sense and it's very internalized. And I think the reason that you only see the scene setter at the end is just that's when you first take that step outside of yourself,
Right.
to have a context of where have we been coming from this entire package.
Yeah, I guess I would have said, I totally hear that. I think that's legit. My feeling is that there's like, there's no structure. So it ends up for me feeling repetitive. Like I would have put the triptych of the rainy window, the sign, and the person's back second, for example, instead of going from a woman kneeling to what I would imagine to be her face, where I begin to think, oh, this is about a specific person's journey, and then someone's hugging that person. And then we get this pullback that's more of a scene setter with the rainy window, the banner, and the person kneeling. To me, that seems like should have been first.
I could see
Then
that
we
there could
go
be
out
some
into the
movement.
daylight.
Yeah.
If we go out into the daylight,
Yeah.
again, is this the same person at the beginning? Who are these specific people? Is this a story? I mean, I could read the story and maybe that would help ground.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this is one
This
of
is-
those stories where the images help to illustrate the text. And so when you do read the text, the image sequencing makes sense.
I mean, I will say that I'm not crazy about either the opener or the ender. They kind of felt a little bit, I mean, I could see the opener, but I just kind of wanted something a little more for both. And the enders just seemed a little pat, but otherwise
I mean,
thought,
yeah, and I
thought it
would have
was
done
fine.
this like grouping of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that happens near the end, which is kind of more of like a place setting or like a tone poem of the grocery store. I would have pushed that further up so that again, or like move them alongside those people so that we start getting the sense of it. I don't know, just to place me better. And I might have integrated those portraits so that it doesn't feel like this is about a specific person. I mean, even this diptych of the woman at the window and then the woman holding her daughter, I have to read the caption to find out they're not the same person, which I think is not great. In fact, I have to read the caption in order to know that they're not the same person from the people at the top who actually don't have a caption. So I actually don't know if this person in the mask, which is our second image, is a person who I need to know anything about. Oh, I got a caption, sorry, mourners. So I appreciate the like artistic gesture. I just think it's not tight enough as a journey for me.
What's the second or third that people are looking at? Those of you who did not agree that this should be second.
I like the Ghost Broadway story. I mean, I could see this could be second, but I like the Ghost Broadway story also. So I just thought it was very elegantly presented. And I just thought the pictures were so odd and kind of atmospheric. But
This was like one of those very simple ideas that just gets elevated by the deft hand of a photo editor or photographer really clicking.
Yeah.
Because this could have gone really wrong really easily too. But in the hands of lesser editors, maybe it would have.
Yeah. I don't know if I would have broken up the last three and kind of sprinkled them throughout. Maybe it's just as well that they're all together, but that was my only question. But anyway. It felt haunted to me, which I liked.
Very much so, yeah.
Do others agree that this should make the top 4 then, if that's what we're looking at? Or do we need to go
Top 4
through the
for,
rest?
I would agree with that for myself.
Same.
I like it.
Okay, so 3 of you do. Why don't we possibly see if we can slim down to 4 again and start placing things?
Let's do it.
Should we, well, do we want to talk about at all the one about the women migrating or the Surfside collapse? Those are the ones we haven't really talked about, right?
Yeah.
I don't think this makes my top 4.
Okay, that's fine.
Same for me.
Yeah, I'm fine with letting it go. I do like, there are a lot of things I like about it, but it's such a narrow kind of slice.
I actually appreciate, I mean, yes, it is a narrow slice, but it's very well executed.
I totally agree.
I don't want to shortchange.
No, I agree.
Yeah, I think I like it better than the theater.
Oh, huh.
My problem with the theater is I don't know if digital is doing it any favors at all. I think the digital might be making it, like the theater for me feels very repetitive. I could see this in the New York Times Magazine with like beautiful full page spreads that I can spend time with. But as I scroll up onto these images, like I'm not given, like these are art prints, you know, the act of scrolling upon them somehow diminishes their worth and it starts to become kind of samey to me.
I think they would be beautiful on the printed page, but I really appreciate seeing them digitally also. So, I mean, I thought the toning and everything worked really well.
I actually really like this digital presentation with the way the images and the text kind of play with each other.
Yeah, I do too. Because I do think the text is also, it puts me a little askew, which I think is kind of the intention.
Yeah, I think I prefer the presentation of this over the Surfside.
But you know, and I know this is such an ignorant question, forgive me, but so when there are digital presentations that incorporate bits of video and audio and stuff like that, is that all like in the multimedia categories? Is that why we're not seeing it?
Yeah, so there is a category called online video and innovation presentation, I think. I may have gotten some of those
Yeah,
mixed up.
because I kind of thought, oh, I felt a little bit the way you did, Emily Kay, about everything we were looking at digitally. And this was the only category I was able to get to digitally last night, and thinking, but they're not kind of using the fact that they're online to exploit, you know, the added, whatever they can add, you know, on top of the printed page. But then I thought, oh, there must be a separate category for the video and audio.
Yeah, essentially there is, and in order to try to create some separation, reminder that
Right.
is looking at photo editing choices for this medium.
Uh-huh.
And even
I
if
think,
there
yeah.
were like audio or video assets, that those would be like bells and whistles, cherries on top of the photo
Mhm.
editing.
Right.
Right, that's true. That's true.
I mean, I think that's one of the things that I like about what happens with the Chaplin South Tower South. Is that the right pronunciation?
Chaplin?
Chaplin?
Oh, the
Assume
Surfside collapse, you mean?
The Surfside collapse.
Uh-huh.
One is just the pacing, so that when I have a full bleed image, I
Mhm.
scroll up and get text over image with change of image, again change of image, again change of image, and then
Mhm.
that seems to be its own little story right there, one
Mhm.
after the next, with these blurbs helping me read the image that are pulled over. The caption is pulled over the image, scrolled off the screen. Traditional grieving period will last 1 full year. That informs this last image. I also think that pacing is really quite good. You're at the scene of the towers, and then you are in a similar look and feel inside a temple, and then the burial, and then this traditional grieving period will last 1 year. And then we are into the story.
Mhm.
And we get the story, and then we get more traditional photo editing here as we scroll down through the story. And then we get another big double page spread that's a close up. So it's like a new focal length.
Right. Can we scroll down so we can see what Emily's talking about, please?
Oh,
Thank you.
sorry. Yeah. And then you get, I think this is a really nice pairing of the person in the bath, in the swimming pool. And then on top of, which is quite calm, and then on top of this very busy image of people in the hospital type area. Oh, and I'm also looking at it slightly smaller so that I'm getting each image in a, you know, I'm able to see a single image at a time instead of this constant scrolling. Anyway, then you get a big double page spread, and again with that text, and it flips to that final image, these final images.
I think it's really well done. I just think that by its very nature, because it's all about, you know, a number of people being buried, you know, that there's just repetition in terms of like the hands on the coffin and the burials. And but I do like it. I think it's strong. I wouldn't have minded in that first image seeing a little more of the buildings kind of next to the site to give it a little more physical context, but anyway, it just seems so much about the silhouettes of the people. Anyway.
Well, it's also partially the design of the UX. You needed a darker image for the text to be legible.
Yeah,
Is this-
I guess, sorry, I'm being so long-winded. I apologize. I think what I'm seeing in the Devon images and the theater images is like a classic magazine layout used digitally, and it works really well. And what I'm seeing here is someone changing the pacing and editing to create something slightly different and new in a digital setting. Like this kind of editing can't happen in a print layout.
Does that sway
This-
any of the rest of you to keep this in the top 4?
I don't
I'm
think
trying
it
to
does
think,
for me.
yeah, what
I
else
don't
would be
think
in
so
the
for me
top?
either.
What else would be in the top 4? So we're talking about the Liberty University, suppressing the sexual assault reports. We're talking about the Asian Americans after the shootings in Atlanta. I mean,
Yeah.
what else are we talking about, right?
Can we
I mean,
just
does it
click
go
on
into
all
the
the
top?
tabs real quick, just to
Yeah.
remind ourselves?
Right, because what else is going to be, does it fall into the top 4 by default? I guess is what I'm wondering.
It does not yet, because we also have the women migrant story.
Oh, the women migrating.
We have
really great.
Indonesia and we have
Yeah.
Ethiopia.
I thought, I think I was the only person who was, interested in Ethiopia. I could let that go because I understand the concerns that other people had about the story. Emily Kay, are you okay with that?
Oh
or-
yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, so I think just to get it down, we could let that go.
Okay.
I will say though, in behalf of the photographer, that I think she very much thinks of herself as a champion to, tell these people's stories, and that as my experience with her is that she's always been incredibly ethical about dealing with the people she's photographing and making it very clear exactly what's going to happen with the photographs. So anyway, I'll just say that.
We scroll through this one just really quickly.
I'm so glad you said that.
This one was really good.
Yeah, I really like a lot of these images too, even though it might slightly rearrange some of them.
Mhm.
But I just like the photography,
Can we make this screen smaller? Is it possible so that we can see images fully?
They crop them like they're not fully. They end up becoming squares in some of them. Like that's no longer a vertical now.
Yeah, it's cropping them anyway into other shapes.
Yeah.
It's making them all squares.
And the pairings are very different too.
I think if we did decide we're going to be looking at all these across desktop or across desktop and mobile, we should.
I agree.
Yeah.
We have to be consistent.
So should we go back to the desktop view?
Yeah, I think we looked at everything else on desktop, right?
Yeah, I
Yes.
think
Oh,
that would
I
be
guess what I'm
great.
saying is that
I
on my
wasn't
desktop,
showing
it's
that.
looking differently. I see it differently on my desktop. That's fine.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
Maybe you have a larger desktop than what we're working with.
Oh.
here. Emily, what are you seeing differently?
Well, this is like, I get this here. I'll send it on Slack. For example. Like I can scroll, I get full images when I scroll instead of scrolling through an image. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
See,
So
oh, that does look different.
I feel like
Yeah.
I feel like my mind kind of compensates, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, sorry, I'm looking at these also on my own screen in addition to here, so I haven't seen where it differs just yet. It's like the next photo after this one, right? Oh,
I mean, if we start getting really technical, everyone's color monitors are calibrated
Well,
differently.
That's true.
I mean, I think
Yeah.
everyone can see whatever they want to see. For me, I just need to be able to see a whole image in order to understand what I'm looking at. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
I totally get what you're saying. I totally get what you're saying. I actually like that feeling of when you're scrolling through a feeling like you're immersed in it, like I'm in the scene.
Right.
Kind of. But anyway.
I mean, the scroll doesn't always work, but for me, it really works on that first one.
Yeah, I'm fine with this. I do like this story.
I think in my entire lifetime, I've only seen the scroll work really well twice, and this is the second time.
Oh, God. Huh. So have we eliminated anything?
I think for
Better
me,
please, let's make it a
this-
top 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Do we each want to do our top 4?
Oh, that's
Sure.
so hard.
And
Well,
then see what the outliers are.
maybe we flip that question. Is there anything we can eliminate that we can all agree on? I would nominate the migration story to not be top 4.
Okay. I do like that story. Do we want to look at it one more time?
Yes, please.
Sorry.
And keep in mind, we have 6, so you're actually eliminating 2.
Oh,
All right.
okay. So it was
Which one
the
do you want to look at?
to the right of that one.
Migration.
The tab, yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, I wish I could have a different opener. It's true.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, this is good. It's just that there are 4 other ones that I think are better.
Mhm.
Gosh, this is like one of those times I wish we can do more than one honorable mention.
Mm.
Yeah.
Ah, man, I felt so sure, but now
It's so good.
it's so hard to lose something that you like so much.
I'm just much more open to this than I was to the printed version, I have to say.
Agreed.
100%.
Yeah.
The scope of the work in the digital version is just really good.
Yeah,
Like
I think,
Emily said prior, like there are some bangers in here that didn't make print, and
yeah,
they're
that weren't in the print. It's true. So,
Well, you know, the other thing that we were struggling with on print was,
mhm.
you know, there are certain like familiar images, right?
Yeah.
Like the
Mhm.
compositions are very familiar, the approaches.
Oh, I love that one. That just went by.
so
Sorry.
good.
And like here we see some of those same images, but it doesn't feel that
Uh-huh.
way.
That was one of my
For
favorites.
Yeah, I
speeding
love
through
that one
them.
too. Uh-huh.
I mean, I think one of the things that I'm thinking about is like who is using digital to their advantage and who is which pieces could stand in print as is and be great.
Mhm.
And this one is clearly using the scroll and the abundance of space that digital offers to create a really robust story, visual story. For me, Surfside does that as well. And
You're making
I
such a good
guess
point.
the rape or a sexual abuse story does that quite nicely by making that inset space where you can cycle through the bruised pictures if you feel like that's allowed, or you should be able to want to see that or whatever. So for me, those 3 are really using the structure of digital to push the story forward.
Sorry.
But it's not necessarily like my favorite photograph.
Sorry.
But I think
Well,
that's
I
where
think
stand.
that's a good thing to think about though, because we're not here to judge UX design. You know, like the tool is the digital, right? But how well did the photo editor use it? Is the question.
This one just felt so strong to me when I looked at it. And maybe it was partly the effect of the surprise, knowing how different it was from the printed version. But I have to say that when I was going through all the these entries in this category last night, the one that's hit me the most is actually being, how should I put it, as taking advantage of its digital underpinnings the most was actually the Broadway empty theater one. That's the one where I felt like it was actually using the interaction and the movement the most, kind of. So
Yeah, I have to agree with that.
Mhm.
I think that's why I'm like kind of stuck on that one, because like I do really love those images. I think they're beautiful, but I think what I'm responding to more is how well the images play with the digital format that it's in. And if it wasn't in that format, I'm not sure that I would be necessarily attracted to those images or that edit of those images.
I do like the images anyway. I think they could have been a slightly different order maybe, but I agree that a lot of what I like is the way that the images interplay with the text as they're moving. So, but this story, I really would love to keep this story in the running if other people are open to it.
Me too.
I'm open to it.
Okay, great.